Welcome to City Club. Good evening. I'm Ted Kay, Treasurer of City Club, and we're excited to welcome you to the second of 4 programs in our annual Meet Your Counselor series, where we check in with our 12 Portland City Councilors about their first year under the new form of government. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones, like I do. We're delighted to be joined today by all 3 District 4 City Councilors, Olivia Clark, Mitch Green, and Eric Zimmerman. And we're fortunate to have Sophie Peel as our moderator for each of our Meet Your Counselor programs. Sophie is Willamette Week's City Hall and Neighborhoods reporter. Our counselors have now had 1 full year of experience in their roles and a full year of working under Portland's new form of government. Tonight, you'll hear them reflect on the challenges and achievements of the past year and the opportunities that they see going forward. Before we begin, a word about City Club of Portland. Our mission is to educate and inform our members and the community about matters of public interest and to provide a space for civic dialogue that encourages respectful discussion and positive change. We accomplish this by producing nonpartisan public forums and debates and conducting policy research that results in written reports with recommendations to policymakers. City Club members provide ideas, lead conversations, conduct research, plan programs that address issues important to our community, and member dues and donations make it possible for City Club to offer programs such as this one for free to the public. Everyone is welcome at City Club of Portland. You can join at our website at pdxcityclub.org. The format for this evening's program will be a moderated discussion among the city councilors, followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions. We encourage everyone to use that opportunity to question your counselors on issues that are important to you. Of course, we ask you to do that respectfully, even though you may feel passionately about the issues. During our Q&A session, please keep your questions brief to allow time for attendees to ask about issues important to them. We have a wonderful and lively lineup of programs scheduled for the next few months. In March, we'll host District 2 Councilors on Wednesday evening, March 4th at the Alberta Rose Theatre, and we'll host District 1 Councilors on Tuesday evening, March 10th at the Urco Community Center. On Friday, March 6th at noon, City Club will feature the second part of Oregon's Healthcare Crisis Series right here at University Place. Our City Council Series sponsor is The Standard, and our winter season sponsors are AARP Oregon, Fight Against Sex Trafficking, Health Association of Oregon, Tonkon Torp, and the Don Sterling Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation. We also thank tonight's outreach partner, the District 4 Coalition. Please join me in showing our appreciation to all of them. And now to tonight's program. With the 2024 adoption of Portland City Charter changes, Portland moved away from its longtime form of government. Using a new ranked choice voting system, Portland voters elected 12 city councilors in November 2024, with 3 councilors elected to represent each of 4 new city districts. These city councilors were sworn into office in January 2025, just a year ago. By the way, our District 4 councilors here tonight, as well as those from District 3, will be up for election this November for a full 4-year term. Portland's District 4 covers all of Portland west of the Willamette River, plus East Moreland, Reed, Sellwood, Moreland, and Ardenwald on the east side. District 4 contains familiar areas like Pioneer Courthouse Square, Multnomah Village, the Pearl, plus other neighborhoods like Old Town, Linton, and Forest Park. District 4 is the wealthiest of the 4 districts and is home to our most senior residents, with the fewest number of households with children. It's ethnically the least diverse. 80% identify as white, 4% as black, 7% as Latino, and 9% as Asian. Surprisingly, District 4 also contains the newest population of the 4 districts, with 13% of residents having moved to Portland within the past year, compared to 7% in the other 3 districts. Our current District 4 City Councilors, Olivia Clark, Mitch Green, and Eric Zimmerman, will each give us a little about themselves in their opening remarks. We're excited to hear about their observations, hopes, dreams, and plans for both District 4 and the city more broadly. Finally, our moderator, Sophie Peel, will, Sophie, besides being a skilled moderator, she has been a Willamette Week City Hall reporter since 2021, and in 2024, congratulations, won Oregon's highest journalism award, the Bruce Bear Award. Hey, applause for Sophie there. We want to thank those of you who submitted questions in advance as you registered for the program. Sophie has incorporated many of your themes into her own questions. And tonight, at the end of the program, we'll also have a live audience question opportunity with opportunity for questions of up to 30 seconds each that end in a question mark. Finally, I invite you to stay after the program for a very brief informal meet and greet with our city councilors. You can also meet City Club representatives and hear more about why you should consider becoming a member tonight. So now, please join me in welcoming our District 4 City Councilors. Take it away, Sophie.
Can everyone hear me okay? Is this working? Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for being here. It's so nice to see all of you. We're just going to get right into the questions. I know Ted said I was going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourselves, but I'm going to assume that most of you, if not all of you, already know maybe a little too much about these 3. So we're going to get straight into the questions. So we're now 1 year into this new form of government, and I'm hoping that each of you can just very briefly, maybe in under a minute or less, just tell us one thing that you think about this new government has actually benefited Portlanders, maybe more than they were served in the prior form of government. Councilor Green, let's start with you.
Is this on? Okay. Yeah, I think just getting right to it, I think that we're seeing other voices who have not been at the table historically in this city have more influence than they used to in the form of government, in this form of government. And so you've got 12 councilors now. I know that I spent a lot of my time speaking to constituents who are frankly surprised that they get to talk to a counselor. And so I think that we've made a lot of inroads in kind of raising this sort of outreach directly to community. It's not without its growing pains, but I just don't think this would have been possible in the old form of government.
Thank you, Councilor Clark.
Great. I would echo that in terms of our ability to meet with people, to be engaged in the community. It's one of my favorite parts of being on the city council. But I would also say one of the best things about charter change is that we now have a city manager, that we're moving to a city manager form of government after 100 years of a form of government that really was not functional, and that we continue to identify things that were left behind by the former governments. We can talk more about that later, but I think the best thing about charter change is that we now have a city manager, and there's going to be a lot more accountability, a lot of culture change at City Hall.
Yeah, to say something a little different, because I totally agree on the centralization. One boss for city employees is a really important thing. So I'll pick, my next favorite is the districts. I think going to a district-based system has been very beneficial for everybody involved. I think it allows counselors to focus in on things that are easy to ignore when you've got the entire city on your radar, but are also hyper important, right? I think that this form of government is promoting our neighborhood associations again after many years of the city kind of working against them. And so the districts have been super important in that. So I'll go with that right after the centralization piece. So thanks.
Can you each briefly talk about maybe your proudest accomplishment this year in City Hall? Councilor Green.
I'm really proud about getting a 4-way stop in front of Dunaway Elementary School for folks who've been asking for that for a long period of time.
I was hoping you guys would answer with that sort of very specific thing.
Well, I want to give you a 50,000 foot and a 5,000 foot. And the 5,000 foot that I'm very proud of is the sale of the Sellwood Community House to the community for $1. After the community invested $2 million in upgrading that, the city wasn't going to take care of it. So that's my 5,000 foot level that I'm really proud of. But at the 50,000 foot level, what I'm really proud of is raising the whole issue of asset management. That this city, we all in this room, we own $80 billion worth of things that have not been well cared for in the last 100 years. And now we got to catch up. So getting a budget amendment on asset management, getting the city to put together an asset management plan to take better care of what we own, I'm very proud of that.
I'm really happy that we got the sidewalk cleaning program going along the 405 corridor. That was one of the things that I ran on because it's like a back to basics, simple thing like Olivia says, and we did it. But I have to be honest, the most important thing that we did this year that I am most proud of was a collective, all city councilors, the entire city, our entire population was, we used the right levers to prevent troops from putting foot in Portland. And that, as a person who wears the uniform, who has taken the oath, who knows the right roles and responsibilities, that took everything in my being to try and have conversations with people who agreed with me, disagreed with me, my staff, the city, the mayors, my colleagues. Using the courts to get the right outcomes is the way we do this, because I truly think on September 27th, that could have bent either direction. And I don't really know that we thought we'd be successful, but we knew it was the most responsible. So I'm very proud of the city council, and that was a collective effort of the entire population of Portland.
So there have been a lot of hiccups in this new form of government. I think everyone has probably read about those, and you've probably read more about the bad things that have happened than maybe the good things. And I think I am culpable in that, as well as other reporters. However, I am curious if each of you think that this new form of government overall has been effective. Whoever wants to answer that first can.
I'm just going to jump in. I think that's a mixed bag. I think depending upon your measurements, you can say we've been pretty ineffective. We have not moved much legislation forward with any kind of pace of quickness that the scale that the city deserves needs right now. So I think that we need to improve on that. And we are going through a committee overhaul that's going to give us a little more capacity and kind of focus in more. And I think that's going to move us forward. But I know that we've also been more responsive, again, to communities who just have always been thrown aside. And I think that is a true test of the efficacy of this kind of ranked choice, proportional representation system. You now have some counselors who are out front kind of championing issues that people thought, like, that's not a priority. So from their lens, it's quite effective.
I agree with Mitch. It's a mixed bag. And I'll just be very brief. I think we've wasted a lot of time. A lot of time gumming the issues over and over. Just a lot of talking. I think maybe as newly elected officials, people want to get out their thoughts, their philosophies, perform, whatever it is, but we waste a lot of time talking too much.
Okay, Councilor Zimmerman.
Yeah. A year ago, the city as an apparatus was telling your councilors that we had no role in constituent relations. You disagree with that. We disagree with that. The reason I'm bringing that up is that there were some structural things when it comes to how this council was set up to perform by the previous, all well-intentioned, but not reasonable and not what the public expected. So we've had to unlock some of those transition documents that I think really put us on our heels for the first several months. So to the point where constituent relations are happening at a district-based level, I think that part is getting better than what we used to see, because you used to go to a certain bureau. Now your counselors are working across bureaus. I like that. But the committee structure committees are generally started after you realize you have a need for committees, not just because they should exist. That's another one of those ideas that kind of got placed upon us, and I think Mitch is right. So I think doubling the amount of time that it takes for anything to pass through the city council was not good. I don't think that's made us terribly effective. But at the same time, the mayor and the city administrator continue to march forward regardless of what Sophie is reporting on the city council, like the machinations of the city council. So there's a point that is going well, which is the executive should be able to execute what they've been budgeted to do, to follow the laws, to implement the laws. And so that part is going better. And this part works, and this gets to Olivia's first point about what's better, is all the bureaus have to now row in the same direction because they all work for the mayor. And that never used to exist. So despite the drama of city council, rowing in the same direction, no matter what your mission, is a better way to accomplish any mission. So I do think that that's been a positive.
I want to stay for a little bit just on what you were saying, Councilor Clark, about there being a lot of arguing, a lot of debate, robust debate, some which may be productive. Another portion is maybe not so productive. I've heard sort of two schools of thought about this level of discussion. One, it's really healthy. This is democracy in action. There should be disagreements that are getting aired. And then I hear another argument that this is just child's play sometimes. And I'm curious where you all land on that spectrum.
I wouldn't call it child's play, but there may be some acting out. I think you've got 12 people, all different. You have a range of politics. You have a range of life experience. And you have people who have not been in government before, who were maybe came from an advocacy organization and are used to advocating as opposed to governing. So there's a difference there. I think some people are still learning. Fortunately, our former council president, Alana Pertl-Guinea, I give her a lot of credit for what she did. She finally discovered what her levers were and started to limit the amount of conversation we would have by saying, okay, everybody gets a chance to talk before you get your second time around, and let's just limit you to two times on an issue and try to really hone in on what's important and not just talk about it all day.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that, these are nonpartisan seats, so these are not political party questions, but there are ideological differences on the council, and I think that's completely normal and healthy to disagree on how we might get to a certain objective and maybe have some robust debate about what we think is in the best interest of the city. I think you can judge the council by its willingness to separate the person from the argument and the policy. And I think oftentimes some of us do a good job of that, and sometimes we miss the mark. Going into this second year, it's always an opportunity for everyone to reflect on, are we showing up in our best kind of ways? I think for my part, I started the year saying a lot more when I had the mic, because you're sort of like, well, I've got to say all my things. And then I realized pretty quickly that I'm using up a lot of airspace, and I probably don't need to add into that thing 2 or 3 more times. But I also think it's really important to recognize that we do have some people who occupy different race, class, and gender positions on the council that are coming from a place of deep disadvantage. And so when they have an opportunity to speak, they should probably speak a little bit more than me, because I've got a lot more advantage than they do. So I think that's the role of the council president as the moderator, and all 12 of us to kind of give each other a little grace here. But I think I'll just wrap it by saying it's okay to fight for the politics you want to see. You don't need to be nasty about it. And I think that's what I'm always going to be trying to kind of, every time I go to bed and show up the next day, I'm always going to ask myself the question, am I fighting for the politics, or is this a bone to pick with someone?
So inter-council relationships aside, there's also the relationship between the administration and the council, and also the mayor, who is the executive. The new form of government did not make it entirely clear what those separation of powers is. And that has been a bit of a power struggle in the first year, I think, between the council and the mayor and the administration. How is that? How have we figured out who's responsible for what and who has the power to do what? Or is that still very much a work in progress?
I'll jump in here if you guys don't mind. I think when we created this new form of government and we disconnected the counselor from the executive role, the implicit expectation is that we're supposed to do oversight. We legislate, we create policies, we put a budget together that the executive should execute without much interference. But if we feel like they're not on track, it's our job to do oversight on that. We passed an oversight resolution last week to ask the question about, $21 million of Portland Housing Bureau money that was not communicated to council in a timely fashion and in a uniform fashion. I'm confident that that's going to lead towards a better set of practices. The new city administrator is coming into a city where we really want to set them up for success by establishing our new norms of oversight. And I think it's just really critical that we do that.
I'd like to just add some stuff here too. I think that generally we have figured out and are figuring out the different roles, but a really important part of the roles is that the executive assert its role. And I think that in the interim time when we had an interim city administrator, a first-year mayor, and not just a first-year mayor, but a first-time politically elected person at all, I do think that the administration didn't quite assert itself, and in any leadership void, others will fill it. And I think that's been an interesting point where I am so thrilled that we have our full-time first permanent administrator. Having come from, before I worked at our city hall, I was a deputy city manager in 2 cities, and it is okay for the city administration to have an opinion on legislation that's coming forward because we weigh in on what this means for the executive function. Ours in this first year was quite shy from that from that role, and that left some wanting on my part, but I do think that is starting to work out. And I would encourage you when you have conversations with the mayor is that he's got to continue to lead, he's got to empower that city administrator. All the bureaus need to understand that they work for that city administrator. And I still think that for this first 13 months, that was a little bit unclear, not really in the charter, but unclear in practice. But I think it's getting there.
Yeah, can I just add really briefly to that we're going through a major culture change, top to bottom. And you've got 7,000 to 8,000 people that work for the city that are having to go through that culture change and figure out. Now, I don't report to an elected official. I have a professional city manager or a chain of command. So, you've got to have some sympathy for them and for us just trying to figure out how this is going to work. And I have to add, too, that I chair the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and I've had a great relationship with the bureaus that I work with. Parks, PBOT, the transportation, water, sewer. Maybe it's easier in these kind of straightforward, core functions of government, but I haven't had any problem in getting what I need, the information that I need, in working with folks, and it's been a good relationship.
So we've talked a little bit about the city administrator role. I think as many of you know, we just got our first full-time city administrator, Raymond Lee. He's coming into probably one of the most difficult positions in the city. He has a lot of power in this new form of government, but he also has to be a liaison of sorts between the council and the mayor, who oftentimes don't agree about who gets to do what or what should be done. I'm curious how you guys think Raymond is doing so far in being that liaison.
Good. I'm happy. I'm really happy. I think we see evidence of it. There's a lot more to come, but this is a new era of accountability. And I think, he's still getting his feet on the ground, but I feel very good about his leadership.
I agree. Where I come from, we have a saying, when in charge, be in charge. He's doing it. His memo to the council and the way he has dealt with the financial findings, he took ownership of it even though he wasn't here when it happened. And I very much appreciate that. If that is a guide to how he'll lead, he continues to have my support.
We will get into, go ahead, Councilor Green.
Ditto. And I'll just say that I don't know if the man sleeps.
Sounds like a personal problem that could maybe become everyone else's problem. Well, we'll get into the financial findings in a little bit. But first I want to ask one broad question. If you were to grade your personal performance in the first year, 1 being worst and 10 being best, where would you grade yourself? No explanation necessary.
6, 7.
7, 8.
8.
It's hard going first. You never really know. Okay, same question, but for the entire council. How would you grade it?
Now 6, 7.
I'm going to put the whole council at an 8.
Ooh, you guys are so generous. The whole ca-
Bush got 7s. He did all right.
Really? Oh.
C's get, what's it? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. 6, 7.
Okay, let's get into a less fun topic, which is the budget. We are looking at probably somewhere around $100 million budget deficit, potentially just in the general fund. So that's not including bureaus that are funded primarily by non-general fund resources. This is the second year that we're going to be facing pretty steep budget cuts. Last time we sort of cobbled together some external funding and also made some modest cuts within bureaus. But I am curious where each of you are looking at potentially making cuts this budget season. Where would be your priority to look?
I was recently presented the city's, I think we're calling it the core services realignment. And for what that means is when we talk about HR, we've talked about procurement, we talk about IT, technology. These are things that all bureaus need, but over the course of a generation or 2 generations, they've all kind of created their own 26 versions of that. There is no organization who needs 26 versions of the same type of service. It is something that probably could have been happening even before we took office, but they have been aggressive in hitting those numbers. They got a target from the mayor, from the council, and that is going to result, I think, in a better chain of command, a better alignment. It is also going to result in significant FTE reductions across the board, where I'm going to say some things are duplicative, but it's more about, does every individual group need a specialized HR person, or is HR able to cover multiple things? That is going to result, and it's going to be a heavy lift because it's what most cities are, it's how most cities are organized, right? They have a dotted line customer service relationship, or they have a solid line in terms of their reporting structures, and ours really doesn't have that. For instance, our CFO only now is able to tell the Housing Bureau or others, the finance teams in those other bureaus, you need to show me all your books, and they have to follow those directions. In the old form, they really didn't. So creating your own little fiefdoms was to your advantage. That core services alignment is going to result in FTE reductions. It's going to result in savings money-wise. And so for me, before I look at anything else, that's where I'm looking most of all. And from what I saw, it is not a small number. It is significant. It is going to be a culture shift. And so that's the first spot.
Well, and that work, I think, is already, it's being done currently. I think the last time I checked, the savings from that are looking to be at most 10 million. I think those are the latest estimates I saw, which is something, but it might not make up most of it.
I think it's more than 10. But the other part in terms of thinking about why do we have a $100 million deficit? Let me just remind folks, we have a very important program that I fight for every year called PIMO. Also, we have Portland Solutions. These are the people who are cleaning up the trash and others around. 5 years ago, they were not in the city budget because they didn't exist. We created them when all of a sudden we got something called AARP funds. So we created almost $100 million worth of new programs on the backs of someone else's funding. Federal government is ARPA. And we never reduced the city's footprint or our lines of business. So the mindset of this core consolidation is the mindset that has to happen so you can get after $100 million, because if you just continue to create new lines of business, you are never going to have what all cities in Oregon have had at this point. We're the last one. What are our core services? What are our core functions? If we can do that in the central, we can do that in more spaces. We have just never done it anywhere, and we're never going to get ahead of it if we don't.
I would say you picked up on my mantra, back to basics. What are the core services that local government is supposed to provide to the citizens? We were all three in the same meeting where we talked about that alignment, and it is one of the best things that's going to happen post-charter reform is getting the bureaus to work cross-bureau and really finding those efficiencies. The bureaus don't each need an HR person. They don't each need a DEI person. They don't each need a communications staff. So I don't know exactly what the number is either, but I would just agree with everything that Eric said. And I would just add that, and I haven't had an opportunity yet to really dig in, but I think if we're going to cut things, we should cut an arm and a leg. We shouldn't just go a little from here and a little from there and a little from here, because if you have one person left in a function, you don't really have a program anymore. You know, that doesn't work. People have expectations, and if you only have a department of one, that's not right. The other place I would look for efficiencies, I'm really hoping that our new city manager comes in with the idea of looking at span of control. That's another place, and again, it's maybe not huge savings, but it's an efficiency we should be looking at. But I think we really need to be serious and look at what are the things that we shouldn't be doing. Just cut the whole thing. I know that sounds really cruel, but as opposed to just leaving one individual behind to run a program.
Well, from where you're sitting, Councilor Clark, what's the arm or leg or extremity that you would want to cut?
Well, that's what I don't know yet. I mean, I really haven't dug in enough to say. The difficulty, and Eric presaged this, is that the general fund, which is where we're really in trouble, only funds law enforcement and parks. I think those two basic functions. So if we're going to cut general fund, that's where it's going to have to come from, which doesn't make me happy at all, because I'm very concerned about public safety.
Councilor Green.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be no avoiding cuts. But I think I approached this budget from the framework that the chief financial officer kind of recently established for us when he laid the cards on the table and he said, colleagues, we're in a financial crisis, which means that we have to have a 5-year look, because we have gotten ourselves in a place where we've done year by year budgeting. And we have, as Councilor Zimmerman has said, we were sort of buoyed for a number of years on the backs of other people's one-time monies that has expired. And then we've got our own homegrown revenue challenges. And so in terms of prioritization, because I know I can't evade your question, my prioritization is going to be on looking at our external materials and services contracts that we can freeze and that we can cut before we start to look at questions of furloughs and layoffs for our public sector employees. That's my principle always, to avoid that at the last instance. A more controversial aspect, and I think an area that we might have some disagreement on, is what are those areas that need to become ongoing if they're going to continue being things that we do that were one-time monies. And this is the Portland Solutions stuff. This is the overnight shelters. We have to have a conversation about that with the public over the course of the next few months to get a gauge of what everyone's comfortable with. Because if we hold any one bureau harmless and special in this, then you're basically going to zero out one whole area. And, you know, as Councilor Clark laid it out, like, you're not zeroing out parks. And no one wants to cut public safety. I would suspect most people in this room don't want to cut public safety. And no one wants to cut the sweep. So at the end of the day, what are we going to cut? We have to have a serious conversation about that. And so my office is going to approach this budget basically next week. We're going to find out what our current service level gaps are and what the resources that are missing to keep them reproduced at the same level as they are today. From there, we can start to have conversations with our constituents and then develop concepts of what a cut could look like. So we can start to talk to our colleagues, find areas of alignment or find areas of disagreement. So after the mayor proposes his budget, we go into that with a little bit of stress testing on some ideas. But I don't think there's any shortcuts. And I will say, this is you guys are going to hate this, but I'm just going to, in the interest of radical transparency, I'm probably going to bring forward a concept to reduce council salaries. So,
I mean, I think when a city's in a budget deficit, you know, there's two things you can do. One, you can either cut services or you can bring in new revenue. I haven't really heard that there's that much appetite right now on the council to pass a new tax or increase fees in any way. But I'm just curious, are any of you considering a revenue concept versus a cut concept?
You guys want me to be the one?
Well, I don't know if we're going to talk about transportation, but we're definitely looking at the fact that for the last 7 years, PBOT has been cut. They have maybe $2 million worth of general fund. They've emptied their reserves. We have potholes all over the city. The federal government is backing away from transportation. The state government is. So we are actually going to be looking at, is there some way that we can help ourselves? And where would that come from? And we can talk more about that.
I'll just let you know that my office has been talking to the revenue department and the CFO on what it would look like to increase the CEO pay ratio surcharge on the business license tax. I think that there's opportunities to provide some tax relief for our smallest of businesses, and then make our largest corporations pay for that. That to me makes sense in a city like Portland. They can't really evade that tax, whereas our small businesses move to Tualatin and Tiger because they're suffering from cost pressure right now. Our largest firms that do business in the city of Portland just got a huge tax break from the Trump administration. So I think we need to be looking where the money is. I know it's not popular to talk about raising taxes, but I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm looking at that right now. That won't be a current year solution though. So if we were to pursue that, that would materialize over the course of multiple years. But as I said, we need to be taking a 5-year look at this, because this isn't like this year's $100 million deficit. Wouldn't be surprised if the following year is the same, frankly.
So amidst this budget deficit, we also, council recently figured out, and the public, that the Portland Housing Bureau now has found $100 million that they somehow didn't previously know about. I think all of the council is pretty bewildered by that and doesn't know what to make of it. But I'm curious if you guys, with the access that you have, know anything more about how on earth that could have happened than the public currently knows.
Yeah. Okay. Last summer, I asked the Housing Bureau director what the Bureau was doing with the fee that all landlords pay on the number of units that they have, right? You pay a couple $100, or I think it's $60. Pay $60. It's supposed to help renters. And I asked about that. And she was not sure, so she went to go get back to me. I had no idea that question was going to turn into a cascading snowball of some other metaphor that would make more sense here, because it just kept going. And basically it came down to, oops, at least with that fund. And then, like a lot of things, like a lot of problems, when you start looking at something, you start to see more. So the housing, the rental services thing that I originally asked about, that falls into the oops category, and we're going to get after that. Now it's gone more and more. And I will say there's some categories of when you write a budget, there's some of this that I'm not sure I would say it's malicious or that was, poor intent, but when you write a budget in local law, state law, you write a budget for the money you're going to execute in the next given year, right? So if you're a budget writer in a bureau and you say, I've been given direction to fund these programs, but you have these little reserve programs over here, but you're not planning to execute those dollars in the next year. Now, when I was at Multnomah County, we did that all the time. And the way you recognize that fund is you say, I'll give you an example. Here is our central courthouse fund that we know is going to be $400 million, but we're going to put a little bit of money at it every year for 5 to 10 years, even though we're not executing it in the given year. That is a lot of what has occurred. They weren't accounting for some of those reserve funds that they thought in their head was designed for certain projects eventually. But the way that state law is written, the way that our budget should be, is that should have been recognized. It should have been transparent. Every city council from here to 10 years ago should have said, oh, I see that extra bucket that is for this project. We're going to talk about it, but we know we're not touching it this year. That's why I don't think all of it was necessarily poor intent. Definitely something that newsflash, the central budget office at the city of Portland has less budget employees than the parks budget, which I would say probably is they have less employees than most bureau budget offices, meaning the bureaus inflated those offices in ways that they never had to answer central budget offices questions before, the way our CFO truly was not able to influence CFO type of responsibilities before. It is the CFO sitting down and probably using a few choice words about open your laptop, show me your accounting, and they were doing a side-by-side comparison to see where the books were off. That's what it took to find $106 million. I don't think this is the last one. I think there will be more of that, hopefully not nearly as big. But I would say that's part of why you've seen that occur, and where it's happening is these folks were not given directions to account for it. That has been, at this point, I think we've sent the message of you better account for all the funds you have, whether you plan to spend it in the next 12 months or not. I know that that's really wonky, but it's also something that has taken a lot of this council's time. It's definitely frustrated the public, because how do you get we have a budget problem, and then the next headline you see is, but we found 106, right? It's not logical, and it's very frustrating. And so that's why I'm spending some time to get into some details here about it. And we're going to get into more details, but it's because they all have to now report to the CFO and the central budget office, where we're starting to see those things come together. I was very clear with the mayor. You're going to have to make some big changes to send the message that no one gets away with that. Like group dynamics, everybody got away with this once, but you better raise the hand and say, I have a concern. And that's already happening. Me, employee in XYZ Bureau, I think I also need to raise the flag about something. That's starting to happen as well. So that's really important. But that's kind of how we got there. The rental services, that falls in the oops category, and that has to be fixed. The rest of it, it's a mixture.
I want to ask about one more curveball that we're getting in this budget season, and that's the Moda Center renovation. So the state legislature is poised to pass a bill that would essentially say, hey, we're going to figure out how to help fund a $600 million Moda Center renovation in order to guarantee that the Trailblazers stay here under their new ownership, who's a Texas billionaire. And Mayor Keith Wilson has sort of floated a plan to use $75 million in Portland Clean Energy Fund tax revenues to help with that renovation. I'm curious where each of you are on with that, where you're at with that specific proposal from Mayor Wilson.
You mean the PSEF?
PSEF specifically.
Well, I think if we can demonstrate that there's an actual difference for the environment and the expenditure of that, if we can actually lower the emissions or somehow have some kind of an impact that I thought PSEF was all about, if we can prove that there's a beneficial impact to the environment, then yes, not a problem.
Councilor Green?
Yeah, I mean, my position has always been that everyone needs to understand that when you make a decision that's different than what's in the current climate investment plan for any dollars, it comes at the expense of other promised dollars. And the community and the public need to understand what's going on there. And so I've always engaged with the PSEF committee way up front and asked them how they thought about ideas. I had an idea last year to borrow against that fund to help give us a year to realize some material savings from the efficiency stuff. They were kind of cool on it, so I didn't pursue it. We haven't really seen the details of this be socialized in that space. I would still like to know from Portlanders what they think about us. I think aside from PSEF, I think there's probably a range of opinions among Portlanders on whether or not we should subsidize this at all. This is a big deal that I think Portlanders need to weigh in on.
Well, I think the mayor has actually been to the PSEF committee. He's actually talked to the folks who oversee it, and I think they've agreed that this is a proper way to use the funds.
So one thing,
I got to weigh in that.
okay, briefly.
I mean, I'm dressed in Blazer colors today because I came from the state legislature where I was asking for $385 million from the state legislature on this as well. So Portland has to get into this if we're going to leverage state dollars. But in terms of the economic engine of $600 million worth of economic activity, this is important. And tearing down and building new buildings, not great from a carbon standpoint. If you can retrofit and avoid tearing down old buildings, that is a good thing. And PSEF does that in other places. That's why when Donnie Oliveira, our deputy city administrator who oversees PSEF, came and said that they weren't cool to the idea. They were kind of like, okay, we see the connective tissue to that. Also, if you think about the workforce that PSEF was designed to, this is one of those opportunities where the city leverages this much to get this much. And I'll tell you, I don't want to know how long the chapter is in Portland's book of our downturned economy or our chapter we don't want to talk about in 10 or 15 years if we were to lose the Blazers. It's about taking the Moda Center from being 40 to 45 nights of Blazer games and maybe 100 other concerts, to having activity at the Moda Center up to 300 nights a year. We have the oldest arena in the league, and there are concerts who cannot even go to Portland because we haven't got a facility that they can use.
Are you talking about Taylor Swift?
Maybe it's Taylor Swift, maybe it's others. It is more than just the Blazers. The Blazers are your anchor tenant, but there's a whole lot. By the way, Portland owns the Moda Center, right? We own it. For $1. But we have to continue to invest in it. I heard somebody say we could just mothball it. And I think about what those post-apocalyptic movies look like, and like Chernobyl, and the weeds have grown into it and things are running around it. That we can't do that. That's ridiculous. But not tearing it down, if we can avoid a tear down, I think that's great.
Do we think they're just blowing smoke, though? Like, what are the chances that
Seattle and Las Vegas are making a real play? They are making a real play. They're still pissed they lost the Sonics. All right? They want teams. They are competitive, and they look more stable than us. So it is.
You think the threat is a very real threat?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just briefly, we are under basically a federal incursion here in Portland. Feds are here. They're tear gassing Portlanders. I think there's been a lot of debate around, or maybe misunderstanding is the better word, about what levers the city council has in order to kind of control for this and control the feds. And I'm curious if one of you could just speak to what levers you guys actually have and sort of how you can flex those.
Our levers are limited, but there's a couple of things that we can do. My colleague and I, Angelita Murillo, put forward and passed an ordinance that charges a detention facility impact fee, which basically creates a cost for landlords who lease to entities like ICE for the harms that they create on the community, which I think is a novel approach that obviously doesn't solve the core issue, which is that ICE is in our city, which is unacceptable. But we can't kick a federal government out of our city due to some sort of big, federalist and kind of supremacy clause issues. But I think we also are well poised, and I think the councilor spoke to this earlier, which is to use these indirect channels as well, to join with other cities, to sue the federal government. We have an excellent and very active state attorney general who's just I don't know if he sleeps. Let's give a round of applause for A.G. Rayfield. We keep winning in court largely because of his efforts and also because of the way Portlanders show up. We also can use our offices as bully pulpits and sites of organizing. So, one of the tools that I use is I called on vets who are bent towards this sort of activism to join me and calling on other service members to refuse orders to deployment. Now that's controversial, but if you've been following me, you know that I'm not afraid of a little controversy in my office. But I think all those little things are different ways that we can press different levers with the kind of communities that we speak to. And I think showing up as a united front is how we win.
I want to just for a few minutes pivot to transportation. Councilor Clark, this is sort of in your wheelhouse, I think.
Is that all you have to say about ICE? They're kidnapping our neighbors right now, and they're destroying. You have more power than you were saying.
If you would like to ask Councilor Green after, you can.
You were saying that you have. Be like Chicago.
That's right.
I understand that, but I'm saying right now.
So transportation, I think what I hear from readers most often is, why are there so many potholes? It's a very basic question. Crumbling infrastructure.
We know that you have more power than you're pretending now.
Crumbling infrastructure is one of our biggest issues across all cities. Councilor Clark, what do city councilors have in terms of leverage for transportation funding? I mean, Portland Bureau of Transportation is for years now has been in an operating, has been in a deficit. Because of, declining gas taxes, we just aren't making the money that we need to maintain our streets. And I'm curious what you're doing about that.
You're absolutely right, Sophie. So sometime back last year, I had a resolution passed unanimously that asked the Portland Bureau of Transportation to come back to the city council with their ideas of how we could raise our own revenue. Because like I said earlier, the feds have checked out. the state's checked out or the state's at a standstill, no matter what we're doing. And now, in fact, the state's even talking about changing the holy grail of 50-30-20, which is the state raises gas taxes and other fees, and it goes 50% to the state, 30% to the counties, 20% to the cities. Now they're talking about repealing that so that they can, maybe raise some revenue and just use it for the Oregon Department of Transportation. So we're not looking very good here in terms of transportation dollars. So PBOT went to work. They did the research. They came back to us with a report, and Mitch is on my committee, Councilor Green, sorry. And they came back with the 20 ideas, and then they highlighted 4 that they thought were the most viable ideas for us to pursue. So we're chewing on those ideas right now. We're looking at how much revenue they might raise, but more importantly, you have an opportunity to weigh in on this, and I think we left some flyers out. We're having workshops in all 4 of the districts, and I'm not supposed to say this, but the mayor might show up. I'll be at all 4 of them, but it's your opportunity to weigh in on which of those options do you think makes sense, where should the money go. I mean, I'm all about just money for maintenance right now, just money for potholes where we really need to preserve our streets. If we don't fill those potholes pretty soon, we're going to have to resurface the entire street. It's going to cost us 10 times more to resurface streets than it is just to take care of the potholes. So I hope that you will come out and to those sessions. The one for our district is this Thursday night at Reiki Elementary School in the Hillsdale neighborhood. It'll be an opportunity for you to walk around the room and to learn about it, and then to weigh in on what you think is the most viable option. I would say, did you want me to actually go into this?
Yeah, just briefly, just what are the 4
just really
top
briefly,
options?
the 4 are looking at our streets as a utility and creating a transportation utility fee, which is something 35 cities, I think, in Oregon already do. The second one is a street...
Briefly, a fee on who?
It would end up on our utility bill, a fee, like a utility fee. Which is actually more sustainable and more fair, more equitable than the gas tax, and probably trade that out for our local gas tax as a possibility. The second one is a street restoration fee. Right now, when a utility digs into the street, it just pains me to see it because it really destroys the integrity of the street. We don't charge a restoration fee. We charge a very small fee for the paperwork. Other cities across Oregon charge a restoration fee that you actually have to pay in some percentage of what it's going to cost to restore the street that you just cut into. The last 2 ideas are around a delivery fee, an Amazon, UPS, the food that comes to your door. Should we be charging a fee on those deliveries? So those are the 4 ideas. I think a couple of them will float to the top, but we really need to hear from you to come out to Reiki and take a look at that.
This is maybe a bit of a question that's just based on my own curiosity, but every single time I hear about a PBOT project, it's been delayed. Or it's at 40% planning completion, or 60%, it's kind of concept of a plan type of thing. And I'm curious if you know anything about why all these PBOT projects just take, 5 years longer than they're supposed to, or just forever in a planning stage.
Sophie, I think we have a disease in Portland called planning. And we have a lot of plans for everything you want, and then we don't execute on the plan. This is not unique to PBOT. It's across the city. I mean, we have shelves of plans and a plan to implement the plan. And we have a real problem executing. I think if anybody has read Abundance or knows who Ezra Klein is, this is a problem, not just in Portland, but we have it really bad.
Then you have to ask yourself, why are we paying people to plan things that we know we're never going to implement? Right? Most organizations have future or long-term planning, close-up planning, execution. And the world of urban planning, generally you don't have, I'm the only person who can plan, I'll just use a curb or a bike lane or whatever. Usually we have generalists and we have overarching policies on how we're going to implement that thing in the city. But we are taking plans and having them okay, you go work on that for a while, even though there's no funding stream, there's no desire for it. It's just in the grand cloud of what could be one day. We really have to get away from that. PBOT, they're not a central core service, but they do also have those same tenets that we've seen in all bureaus, where we should only be planning what is in our, because part of this is we have 5 and 10-year funding cycles. If you're not in it, why are you wasting time on it, right? And that we can argue about projects and philosophies, but we better have a implementation plan that goes with them.
I do want to say, to give credit where it's due, is the new Priya Donapal is an excellent deputy city administrator. She's made some excellent hires with her bureau directors. They're taking a unified capital approach to the entire suite to say when PBOT has a plan, it needs to align with the work that the BES department needs to do as well. So that way you tear the street open at one time and you do all the work at once. That's the vision for the future. And they're very responsive to the Public Works Committee on this. Also, when there is a crisis, they show up. There was a water main break on First Avenue, Southwest First Avenue, and they had that restored very quickly. And they kept us really up to snuff on the latest machinations. So hardworking folks on the front lines, for sure.
Thanks for saying that, Mitch. I really appreciate it. We're really fortunate to have the leadership that we have in Public Works.
So unfortunately, we just have a few more minutes for these questions, and I have about 10 more questions I'd like to get to, but I'm just going to skip to the fun one, given our time constraints. So I did give these counselors a heads up that I was going to ask this question. What is one adjective, one word you would use to describe the three of you? And I can go first, but it's not nice. So I'll caveat this by saying I could only find adjectives that describe 2 out of the 3 of you. Yes, I'm sure Councilor Green knows where this is going because I talk a lot about his bald head. Bald. I couldn't get it out of my head. Councilor Clark, obviously this has nothing to do with your hair.
I feel so left out.
We haven't ruled out whether you wear a wig or not.
And the only other one that I could only think of purely descriptive adjectives. The other one for all 3 of you is pale, and I share that. So I was really struggling with this one.
Wow. That's hilarious. Can I start?
Sure.
I would say that we are collegial.
That's good. Honestly, this district gets along, I think, better than all the other districts. So we're lucky in City Hall. I appreciate my colleagues a lot.
Yeah, I would say chummy.
Isn't that something to do with fish? It's like, yeah.
You know, I guess I'll say variety, right? You get something pretty different with each of the 3 of us in this district, and that's all right. That's what this district is.
That's nice. I should have said that one. Okay, so we are going to transition into the audience question portion of this. How's this going to work? Dana has the microphone, and if you could line up maybe on the right-hand side if you have a question. Please keep your question very brief. It has to have a question mark at the end. No preambles. And please introduce yourself briefly at the beginning.
Also, I will be holding the microphone, so please don't grab it.
Okay. Hello, my name is Chandler Patey. I'm a local activist, and I live down next to the ICE facility. My question, though, has nothing to do with ICE. It is, how do the 3 of you feel about direct democracy? And are you more in favor of a more direct democracy, or are you more in favor of a technocratic republic?
On the spectrum of that, I'm much closer to direct democracy than the other spectrum. I do think you have to have some representative boards, and we could get into a bigger, longer conversation about municipalism and confederated municipalism, all we want, but that's, I'm much closer to like citizen assemblies than I am, say, something like just cede all your control to some sort of technocrat.
Wow. Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think representative democracy is, and our district has more than doubled, our city has more than doubled than what we used to see. So I think that's good. Good question.
Good evening. Thanks, y'all. I'm Simca Bridgetrade, and I especially appreciate Councilor mentioning $82 billion in public assets, although I like the word infrastructure better because assets, we all think like allocations with Schwab or whatever. On the money point, it's especially painful to me as a person who's been in rapid rehousing, this $100 million to the Housing Bureau. We're talking about not the top, not the second, third, but the fifth bureau. How are you going to talk about a $42 billion bureau having $100 million, and where does the money really come from? It's not general fund. You make this so confusing.
Well, it's coming back to us. Actually, it's on the docket for tomorrow night's council meeting, but I think there may be a proposal to punt for now and try to get a better handle on what those funds are and exactly what they can be spent on. So we're going to revisit that, definitely. Thank you for the question.
Hey, frustrated by the removal of the diverter in Northwest Portland. Do you consider like bike ped safety and access to transit a core service of the city?
Yes, absolutely. We've and our committee has spent a lot of time on safety issues, and dedicated resources to it actually.
Here's a softball. What is that thing on Thursday? Where is it? And how do community members get involved and give their opinion on what you're talking about?
Okay, thank you. And I think there's a flyer or some flyers out front. It's Thursday night from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Riki Elementary School gym. And it's more of a workshop. You walk around the room, learn about things, and put your votes on stickies and things like that. So you don't have to stay the whole 2 hours and nobody's going to lecture you. So I think it could actually be fun. I'm hoping for a really good turnout Thursday night. And we're doing that in each of the 4 districts. So there is a flyer. We brought a few flyers. Thank you.
Carl Rohde, Pearl District. I will give you a 9. I think that you are doing an extraordinary job of flying a plane that is still being built. And
thank you, Carl.
Thank you for all that you're doing. I know how hard it is. My question is that I agree the districts are a great new thing for the city, but with districts come parochialism. So how do you balance the needs of the district with your consideration of the city as a whole?
I think that if you look at the sidewalk improvement program resolution that all of us up here were co-sponsors of, that was an example of those of us in District 4 fighting for infrastructure investments for sidewalks alongside other people from District 1 and just saying, I understand that there's a ranking sort of equity framework that matters, but also don't forget that we've got whole neighborhoods that have just never had this, and we got kids walking. I think Councilor Zimmerman always says walking in the mud. Some kind of an improvement would be better than waiting for 20 years for sidewalks. I ran on that, and so I think that's one example, and that's an area where we cut across any other division, just come together and say we do need infrastructure for our community.
I just can't help but say, though, Carl, to your question, is that I feel a certain amount of animosity towards our district in that we do have cultural resources, we have the higher education, we have the downtown, but I think what people don't realize how important District 4 is to just the economy of the city. And I think we get sometimes short shrift from our friends in the other districts. They don't really appreciate us. Because I think really we are, this is where the money comes from, is our district to pay for all the things that we want citywide. And I'd like a little more respect.
Yeah, it's a great delicacy, right? I find it coming into a lot of my decisions and a lot of my conversation with my colleagues. And so it is a delicate weaving where sometimes I've still got to explain why the thing in District 4 is super important. And also, we're really challenged with most of the city thinks of District 4 as downtown and downtown only. Tell that to Maplewood, Ash
Linton,
Creek, Markham neighborhood,
Sellwood.
Linton. And so we do have an advocacy job also because we have parts just in our own district. But it's very delicate knowing that there were times in this city when all the electeds lived in our district. There was another time when they all lived in District 2. But those are kind of our histories. So I think we're all approaching it quite delicately, but firmly, to Olivia's point, and Mitch's too. We find the things where we can advocate like mad for District 4 as well.
Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. How am I doing? Push the button. Good evening, councilors. I'm Juliet Hyams from Northwest Portland, and I'm wondering if you have any plans to hold in-district office hours soon, and may I invite you to do so at our new Northwest Library.
What a great idea. Thanks, Juliet. Actually, this first year in office, what I decided to do was to hold meetings in all 32 neighborhoods, but not necessarily with the neighborhood associations, but I had my own, and I had the neighborhood associations send people to them. But I think that's a great idea. And when we rearrange the committees, I think we're going to have committees on Tuesdays, council on Wednesday, and Thursday, so that we'll have Mondays and Fridays available to do more of what you're talking about.
And my staff are here. We're going to look forward to holding office hours in there, and also try to get a preschool in there.
Yeah, this year we're approaching. We're doing morning coffees across the different neighborhood associations and neighborhoods, afternoon beers, and we're doing town halls. And so we're putting out a variety of ways. One of the great learnings for me is just like people engage differently, right? So. I'm trying to show up differently across all the neighborhood associations, given a different role this year, and so those have been really valuable. From Sellwood to Linton to down in Multnomah Village. I think we have beers in Multnomah Village this week. I'm looking at Trevor, who's nodding. Yes, we do. But happy to share more of those. Yeah.
Hi there. Thank you for all of the hard work you guys are doing. I really appreciate Councilman Zimmerman, your effort along the 405. Olivia, I love you. Mitch, hang in there, dude. So my name is Laura Curry. I'm from the Stadium Hood neighborhood, and I am asking the council representatives if you will be supporting State Bill 1573.
That
is Drazen's bill. You might want to explain it, or I can explain it. If people here don't know what that is, they probably should know. So 1573 is sponsored by Representative Drazen. It has been a bipartisan bill now, and it did not make it out of work sessions. It has been, what would you say, closed, whatever that is, by our Representative Reynolds. The bill is, I know I'm explaining it, the bill is to provide, I'm going to use the right language here, to provide framework and accountability for syringe services. So they are not needle drops, but they are actually exchanges. And this is to replace what has been happening in my neighborhood, and this helps not only the people that need the services, it helps the community to support the people that need the services. And right now we've just been suffering with a deluge of non-accountability on any set. Okay.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm afraid that bill for the short session might be dead. It is dead. I think we have to bring it back in the long session.
Will you support it? That's
Yes.
Yeah, I was in Salem today, and I think if it initially was a 2,000-foot buffer from any school, it will have legs and it will live if it goes to 1,000. That was an amendment that I think people were hoping that the sponsor was going to put forward. So if that can happen, I think it's got legs and it should pass.
We agreed to 1,000 feet, but there were other things.
Sorry, we've really got to move on. Thank you, though.
Hi, my name is I'm Maureen Sorrell. I live downtown, graduate of Portland State. I am just wondering, in 2021, the Oregonian ran an article about a shortage of public swimming pools in the city, and my thought is that downtown Portland is ideal for that. Real estate values are really low. I saw that real estate has plummeted 70%. So, I mean, a public swimming pool will take up a lot of room. Is anybody prioritizing this? Because I know parents can't get their kids into lessons, and I know that if you try to get a lane, it's really hard to get one without sharing it with 4 other people.
Yeah, I was going to talk about swimmable cities. I really appreciate your question. I used to use the pool at the Vermont Community Center all the time. I don't see us having the resources to put in pools right now. However, we have a Willamette River right out here. I've been working with Willie Levinson and the Human Access Project, and we joined the International Swimmable Cities because we've been working really hard to get people down to the Willamette to actually swim. It is safe. I mean, we had like one CSO, one sewage overflow last year in a horrible rainy season, but we invested in the big pipe to fix that. And I live right on the water. I've been in the water. It's safe. So we have a giant swimming pool up and down the city that we could be using. But I think in the short term, I think that's the option. Can I hop in? I want to use this question as I pride myself on telling the truth, and I'm going to tell you a hard truth, but I'm going to say it. I don't find that I would be advocating for a new Portland Parks and Rec pool in downtown Portland until I saw that, the North Portland one and the other districts got built, that East Portland was taken care of. If that was occurring and that was done, then I think I could, but I'm not in a position where I would advocate ahead of those other districts right now. And that's challenging. That's tough. But when I evaluate where the kids are at, that's where I'm thinking about. And it gets to one of the questions about how do we do the parochialness of our own district versus citywide. And that's a good example for me where I kind of know where I'm at, even when it's hard to tell my constituents that. I do.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Kathy Schmidt. I live in Westmoreland, one of the zones that got swept into the west side because your yards are too big. I don't know. You need the population. Anyway, the question is, can we accelerate the rate that you will budget for sweeping the streets? We spend all this money on changing all of these ramps for wheelchairs and people who have mobility issues and putting in rain swales. And yet everything gets clogged up with all of first the pollen, the flowers, and then the leaves. And we haven't even had enough leaf sweeping and spring pollen sweeping to keep those systems even cleared out for wheelchairs to go down those ramps or the swales to stay open.
I mean, that's definitely something that I hope the mayor funds in his proposed budget. That's something I think all of us would like to see.
Can we make a comment about the budget, by the way? Just separately, you just made me think that the mayor actually in the last budget, he consulted all of us at least 3 times and asked us what our priorities were. And I think he'll probably do that again.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much for coming. It's really been interesting and informative to get to hear from each of you. I'm Deborah Heath. I'm an anthropologist, and part of my work is focused on artisan animal agriculture. I spent a number of years visiting foie gras farms in France, Quebec, and the question mark's coming, and the U.S., and witnessed firsthand that the conditions are impressively humane, free range, free range agriculture. The funnel feeding takes a couple of seconds at the.
Please get to your question.
And
sorry.
The question is, why is the city council focusing on this issue on trying to ban foie gras rather than focusing on large-scale industrial agriculture, which is a serious issue of.
I should probably take that. I think that just because you can't solve all the problems doesn't mean you shouldn't try to make a dent. The animal rights community in the city of Portland has brought to my attention that the farms that we source from are not so squeaky clean and are not as humane as they let on. And so this is something that we talk about before council. It will go to the full body to be voted on, and you should bring your testimony forward. Thank you.
We have time for just one more question. If you are in line, I think all 3 of these counselors have agreed to stay for another 10 or 15 minutes. So if you want to come ask them in person, feel free to do so. But this is going to be our last question.
Well, I guess they got the last one. Thank you for all the help you've been providing to us for the last year. My question is, we're looking at the Keller Auditorium and this site as potential. The discussion I remember from last year is talking about trying to do 2 sites, and I think Portland simply can't afford, given all of our financial issues, 2 sites. So what kind of decision making are you thinking about to hone in on a real decision that's realistic?
Yeah. I really appreciate that question. And in fact, today I actually met with PSU President Ann Cudd to talk about other options, other ways to thread this needle, because you're right, we can't support 2 3,000 seat facilities. So I think I asked her to go back to the drawing board, and we'll bring this up in the mayor's ex officio committee that's working on this, to actually see if there's a different way that we can solve this problem. If there's a different way that we can plan this facility and at the same time support the Keller. I think we haven't really explored all the options yet, so we're working on it. I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tells me on that one.
Well, that concludes our program. Thanks to Mitch, Olivia, and Eric for a thoughtful discussion. We wish you the best as you start your 2nd year of service, and thanks to Sophie for her expert moderation tonight. We'd also like to thank our series sponsor, The Standard, and our season sponsors, AARP Oregon, Fight Against Sex Trafficking, Hospital Association of Oregon, Tonkon Torp, and the Don Sterling Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation. And thanks to the producers of tonight's event, Dana Bach-Johnson and Sam Metz. And finally, please consider becoming a City Club member. Go to pdxcityclub.org/membership to join, and if you join tonight, you can use the discount code NEW40 for $40 off your membership. NEW, all caps, 40. Now, please join us for a casual meet and greet with your 3 District 4 counselors. We're adjourned, and good night.